Thank you very much. Be with us for the next session. We have seen people coming in already. We see Sean Kelly, also member of the European Parliament. We see the next speakers, Barbara Priesching from Vaillant, Antonio Paparella from the European Commission, DG GROW. We see Declan Daly from Tipperary Energy Agency. And who did I forget? Rob Olson. No, I didn't. From an unexpected part, maybe the Ingka group, IKEA, and better known as IKEA. And then I think I have my 5 speakers together. It's likewise, I think the starting point could be the same. We see all this legislation happening. We have called this session the implementation agenda of large-scale heat pumps, and that's why we have brought in people that we thought are not the typical ones. We also, for correction purposes, we brought in Sean Kelly to give us a bit of a grounding when it comes to what is politically possible, so that the industry and the other participants are not getting too outrageous in their wishes. But we are discussing, as I said, these 40% of renovated building plus 35 million renovation of the least suitable buildings for energetic modernization today, which means a huge amount of work that is in front of us. And this means double-digit growth in replacement of heating systems, in renovation of the building core, in doing all this together and introducing new technologies. And probably we are not equipped to do this with the current set of installers in the way they work. So maybe we need something else. We need new ideas. And that's why we have brought in together one manufacturer, the Tipperary Energy Agency, as I would say, an integrator, Rob Olson, with new ideas on how to do from an unforeseen party. We have brought in Sean Kelly, that is very active in also making policy for people on the ground, and Clemens Haag, who is actually doing things for a company for the mother company, Bull Constructions, but also in an innovative perspective. So I would like to start with the industry to say, are we ready? Can we do this? And I would ask you a bit of the same question. We have seen a heat pump growth in the last years that was double-digit, 15, 16, 17, even 19%. Are we prepared for such a growth for the next 10 years? Can we do that? And that's the question to Barbara.
Thank you, Thomas. I think, we have to be prepared, huh? And there is no doubt, that this is a really big challenge, not only for the industry, but I'm more than confident that this challenge will pay off. I think we need, from an industry point of perspective, from different angles. So number one is clearly, we need to further strive, in enlarging and optimizing our supply chain. So means on the one hand side, investing further heavily in our production capacity. And on the other side, also strive towards more automated processes. And this is where digitalization then comes in. Secondly, we need constantly invest and further develop our products and their related systems. And I would say, as an industry, we haven't done such a bad job. Remember back, I think 2 or 3 years ago, nobody, was really confident about, heat pumps in renovation. And now we are, in a panel discussion only about, renovation. Third, I think, we need further work on offering services to our customers and to our business partners. So take as one example, remote maintenance. Take as another example, home energy management. This will create, let's say, a win-win situation for everybody. And this is where digitalization will play an enormous role. And when I'm saying, a win-win situation, let's start with the customer. Let's start with this more generic buzzword of peace of mind, which we can bring us in as a heating industry, but also look into, let's say, our business partners, especially installers. And then I would also say, there's an enormous potential also for us as an industry when striving and when moving towards efficiency. And last, I joined them in the last session, it's all about the installer. The installer will remain the crucial anchor point towards the industry and the end customer. And therefore, I mean, it's let's say, important to inspire traditional installers, but inspire installers also for this exciting journey. Inspiring means show them that there is a big business opportunity for them, also in order to ensure the sustainability of their business. And therefore, let's say, one important task of the industry is also helping and supporting installers, in accelerating, their technical skills. So I would say, in a nutshell, the pain will turn out into a gain for all parties involved, our customers, our business partners, and finally also for the industry.
And this is a great handover and starting point for the question that I have actually prepared for Declan Daly. The Tipperary Energy Agency is an integrator. You are talking to installers, you're talking to planners, you're talking to manufacturers. You're making it attractive in the first place to end users to select a heat pump or an energy efficient renewables-based system because you provide trust to them. What else are you doing? And would you say that what you're doing is that an essential part to overcome this perceived lack of installation capacity? Is there more than just the installer that you need to bring to the game?
Thanks very much, Thomas. Yes, so Tipperary Energy Agency and the Superhome scheme would be seen as a one-stop shop for retrofit. So we would be the independent, trusted advisor between the end user and the contractor installing the heat pumps, or from the fabric side. So as Barbara mentioned, the upskilling of the person that's physically putting in the heat pump, but you probably need to bring it back a level before that and look at who is actually serving and designing that building to engage with that end user to go along this journey. So as Tipperary Energy Agency, we would be that intermediary that would engage with the homeowner or the housing association to try to implement this agenda. So a lot of the contractors may wish to install a certain product or in a certain way, but are they actually designing the building for that heat pump? So go back to, especially in Ireland and in colder countries as well across Europe, fabric first approach. So we need to be very wary of not putting in those plug and play heat pumps, to be really looking at reducing the energy demand first. So before you put in any heating product, it's the building fabric, air tightness and ventilation need to be examined, but from a competent person. So you're not asking a contractor to do that, because unfortunately a lot of them don't have those skills at the moment. So if you ask a plumber or a heat pump installer to do a full design or heat loss calculation on a building, unfortunately a lot of them don't have those skills, or what type of windows or what type of wall insulation for a certain building typology. So we would be seeing that trusted independent source. So one of the key things, I believe, is to create more one-stop shops around Europe. There is a few energy agencies like ourselves in Ireland, and there's a few in the UK. So a homeowner can go to us and get a full design of a retrofit, and we can give, I suppose, show them all the subsidies, so the grants or the carbon taxes as well. So what's the difference of you putting in an oil boiler versus a heat pump, or how are you locking yourself into that? We would see a huge issue on upskilling and skills. So not just installers, but the actual surveyors and engineers, and going down to afterwards. So the whole maintenance project plan as well. So once we put in these millions of heat pumps across Europe, in a year's time or the next 10 years, who's actually going to be coming out and maintaining all of these? So we would very much look at a building as a whole house retrofit rather than just a heating source. So it's to build all that in together. Because a lot of our clients, we would prefer if everything is done at the same time. You reduce cost. You don't end up doing measures that will prohibit measures you try to do in future years. Like, I know there's a sizable cost to do that. So that's where a low interest finance really comes in, and so you're bringing to the one-stop shop, you're bringing the engineers, you're bringing the contractor, and you're bringing finance, and somebody at the end to snag a house to make sure it's actually done correctly, because we don't want poor quality of work to kill the market before it gets off the ground.
Yeah, I think this is an important point also for policymakers to understand, and that's why I'm very happy to have Sean Kelly here, because Sean describes himself, or I think that's at least my perception from his website, he's a very down-to-earth policymaker talking a lot to the end users. So my interest would be to understand, Sean, do you think that this end user understands what they are supposed to do in the context of this European energy transition? Or is that so remote, it's in Brussels and they don't know what to do anyhow, plus they will not find anybody to help them executing these wild dreams of policymakers? What's your experience there?
My experience is exactly what Declan has pointed out, and I'm very grateful to him for so doing, because my worry, and it's a big worry, is that the Commission and the parliamentarians are doing tremendous work in creating the environment for decarbonising our economy, which also means decarbonising our buildings. And we have to achieve a huge decarbonisation between now and 2030. It's happening too slowly. Only 1% of buildings being done per annum, which has to at least double. But Declan pointed out, and the question you asked me, is that people, number one, aren't as aware of the need to renovate buildings as they are of other areas. In Ireland, for instance, they're talking every day about a 7% reduction in emissions for this government, where we have the Greens on board, thankfully. But what do they emphasise? They will talk about agriculture, they will talk about transport, they will talk about fossil fuels, etc. Very few talk about buildings. That is not to say that something isn't happening, but not enough. So the first thing we have to do, we have to bring buildings right up to the top of public discussion. And secondly, as he pointed out, we need to ensure, and absolutely what he said, we should write it down and distribute everywhere to make sure that low quality work won't kill the market. I know of people who tried to do this and the market was essentially killed because they didn't have, the people installing didn't have the skills. And I was delighted Declan mentioned not just the plumbers, not just the builders, he also mentioned the surveyors and the engineers. Now, for a normal layperson to question them, you would put down your head and wait for a belt back, and you'd be told, what do you know about it? These are highly qualified people, but they haven't kept up the speed. And I think his point is absolutely correct. When you look at it, Thomas, from my figures, we have 5,000 plumbers active in Ireland. Only 140 meet the SEAI standard to install heat pumps. That will tell you that we as policymakers, we in the Commission, etc., you producing all the material, no use unless you have the people to install it. So we really must get this message across. And the likes of what Declan is doing, Tipperary Energy Agency, it's really the first real sign of support and consolation to both individuals, but also communities who want to come together to know if we put our money in here, we are going to have a good job done in the end. If we create that confidence, I have no doubt we can achieve an awful lot. Because remember this, while COVID has been devastating, an awful lot of people who have kept their jobs haven't spent a penny outside of the routine. So there's a huge amount of money there. And if we could say to people, in the interest of the environment, in the interest of your own health, in the interest of your own comfort, put the money into retrofitting your house, get rid of the carbon emissions and have a heat pump, etc., that will stand the test of time. If we could do that, I think, and we must create that thinking amongst the public. We haven't done so yet, but we must do it. And then the Declan said, ensure there's a one-stop shop that guarantees them that it's going to be done correctly. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. There is another one-stop shop in this world. Are you living or are you living with IKEA? Or I can't really repeat this marketing session. But Rob, I mean, we could ask ourselves, why are you here? But as Sean said, we need people that create trust. So IKEA has created the trust that everybody can have affordable design. What can we expect from a player like IKEA with your ambitious decarbonization targets? Now you're actually even taking furniture back. So you're a recycling company too, but will you eventually sell a heat pump or heat pump renovation packages and even touch upon the maintenance that Declan talked about after 10 years? So I can give my heat pump back to IKEA, get a new one?
No, thanks, Thomas. I appreciate the opportunity to connect here as well. And I think maybe to start with a little bit before we get to what we might sell in the future around how we look at it. And Sean made a very good point around the importance of buildings. I think we believe that buildings will play an integral role in the EU's efforts to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. And with this, we support the Renovation Wave to improve the energy performance of buildings. And it's something that we've taken into our own commitment. We've committed to become climate positive by 2030 and to run 100% renewable electricity by 2025 and aiming to phase out fossil fuel-based heating and cooling by 2030 as well. In order to achieve these goals, we attack it from a couple different angles. We start with energy consumption and improving energy efficiency, really looking into our building envelope to see what we can do to improve, but starting with the human element, educating our teams to reduce their usage, turning off lights, equipment when not in use, setting schedules through our building management systems. And then we turn next to creating efficiencies, such as switching to LED throughout our buildings, installing power optimizers, as well as artificial intelligence that you can connect to your HVAC systems to really optimize the usage. And then we move into renewable energy generation at the final stage. One aspect of this is within our heat pumps. As I mentioned, we aim to phase out fossil fuel heating and cooling by 2030. In order to do this, we've actually already started, we're in 31 countries around the world from an Ingka perspective. The overall IKEA brand is in more countries as well, but the Ingka franchise portion is in 31 countries. And we've sat down to build a plan on how we're going to get there by 2030, really looking at what exists in each market, because it is different market to market to work with and what the options are. And looking at trying to do it in the most sustainable way as well, so that we're not just replacing a newer system. Tomorrow, we're staging it out to trying to tie it to end of life where possible. And then all new construction, starting with renewable heating and cooling from the onset. Something we've put a lot of focus around and really driven towards moving. We see it as we need to be a leader in this, not just from what we might sell to the end consumer, but we need to be a leader in our own actions so that we can inspire others to follow the same direction and same movement. If you talk about, will we sell heat pumps? Will we maintain heat pumps? I think it's a great question. In reality, we actually are testing a few different things within clean energy as a service to help enable and empower people to live a more sustainable life. We're still in very early stages, and this will grow over time. But we have today started with home solar in 7 different markets. There is around heat pumps, there's a small pilot in Switzerland in partnership with Helion, where we offer an energy service for customers to use heat pumps as an energy efficient solution for their homes. And then through tests like this, we want to understand what offers best suited for the needs for life at home, and then help enable the many people to live more sustainable lives. But a lot of, where our focus is today, it is bringing up the importance of the buildings and seeing how do we make them more efficient and then also convert to renewable energy as well. We actually have a few buildings already that are producing more energy than they're using, and that's a goal that we plan to continue to expand to more and more buildings.
And we will hear about this Helion adventure in the next session. But let's focus now, and that is summarizing a little bit what we have heard so far, on this need for a more encompassing strategy. We have a number of building blocks. Technology development has advanced quite a bit. We have one-stop shops like Declan's and Tipperary Energy Agency. We have policymakers that take this serious, and we have a commission that has said it's energy for all. It's an energy for all package, actually. And now we are in this situation where also the energy systems integration strategy foresees 40%. And I said that in the previous session. This sums up to something like 48 to 60 million heat pumps to be installed by 2030. And that's why I'm very happy to have Antonio Paparella from DG Grow here, with whom I have discussed previous to this session what the Commission could do. The industrialization strategy foresees platforms. We have a battery alliance, we have a hydrogen alliance. Can you imagine that there would be a heat pump alliance in the next 5 years to pick all these positive points up and accelerate them?
Thank you for the invitation. And the first thing that I would say is that maybe your question is coming a bit too soon because in the Commission agenda, because we presented an industrial agenda in March 2020, and our President has asked us to update it again in June 2021. All what I can say is to reflect a little bit what are the ongoing debate around this future industrial strategy. The first thing is that the reflection is that we should have an industrial strategy that is not any longer focused on specific value chain, but which has a wider approach, more systemic approach, which is encompassing the ecosystem that is around a certain number of industrial sectors. Because this would give us a better idea about the dynamic, internal dynamic that are ongoing within some industrial sector, with some unusual, with new entrants in the industry, but also in interaction with the public sector. And also it will allow us also to have a better understanding about the resilience of some parts of the ecosystem towards the twin challenge of green and digital transition in current and future challenge. In practice, what we are looking is also about the interaction also with other sectors, other ecosystems. For instance, what we would like to see, if I'm taking the example of the heat pumps, is that you are speaking about cost effectiveness, but how, for instance, we develop more synergies between the heat pump industry and the digital industry, boiler manufacturers, to make the systems more effective. Also, in terms of research innovation, how do you envisage new cooperation with other industry, for instance, the chemical company and startups to find innovative materials, components, and solution to improve the performance and end of life, solution for heat pumps. And also, as this has been already addressed by previous speakers, it's how the public and the private sector engage in a partnership to upgrade the skills that are needed for additional specialization for integrated solution, which are needed in the building sector. So you will understand that what we are trying to do is to better understand the dynamic between different industry that could cooperate between that. And for that, of course, we need some new instruments, some new instrument like alliance, like clusters, depending on the geographical reality and also the challenge that we have to face.
Can we quickly pick up on that topic and ask the other panelists here, because this idea of an ecosystem, and we are discussing also circular economy, and you're involved in that as DG Grow. So circular economy, ideally, yeah, energy flows, material flows, all of this. How would the other speakers see themselves as parts and contributors of industrial ecosystems? What do you do today to make that happen? And where could you expect more support, both from the policymakers in the parliament, but also from the Commission? Maybe we start with Barbara and then go through in, like with my tiles here, Declan and Sean and Rob.
When you were talking or asking about, challenges, or are we ready? I think, it's we're facing now in this transformation, from fossil, towards electrification. So in heat pumps, we're facing a change in paradigm. So coming from a pure, I would say, product supplier, entering into an HP ecosystem solution provider. That sounds very theoretical, but I think, it's easy to nail it down. You have on the one hand side the product, then you have the system, and then you have a solution, which means, the services, which I was just, before tackling. And this cannot go in isolation as being a pure manufacturer. We need business partners. So we need the installers, but we need also, especially for renovation, let's say companies like Declan's company in providing, additional, let's say, knowledge and know-how either to the installers, but also to the customers. And this is, I think, where we as an industry, have an important stake, also to deliver. And this is also, I think, the challenge also of an industry provider.
Declan, are you the blueprint of an industrial ecosystem, Tipperary Energy Agency?
Part of a blueprint, maybe. I suppose, like, challenges on our side here as a one-stop shop, we can hire and train up new engineers and surveyors, but how do we send them to the heat pump manufacturers to understand how their products work, I suppose? So the other suppliers of services and equipment have to link into the central hubs of one-stop shops or service providers. So if we want to send someone on a training course, we can go, oh, here's all our heat pump partners. Here's their 2 or 3 day course of how to install this heat pump. Here's the after sales service. Here's the commissioning engineers. Because most plumbers or installers they might know how to install it, but do they know how to commission it and balance a full system? Or do they need to know? So can a heat pump supplier supply the expert to be around and commission X amount of heat pumps a day? The guy on the road out of a van doesn't need to know the full ins and outs of how to commission a system correctly. So it's all heat pump suppliers or fabric products to be feeding back into that ecosystem with all the skills. Everybody doesn't need to know everything. We just need to have access to it, I think, is the key.
And what would you expect from policymakers? Maybe also a quick follow-up by Barbara. What would you expect from policymakers if we hand over to Sean then as the next speaker, what should he do in the European Parliament to make such ecosystems, to make such bridging of systems more of a reality? Do you have any specific wishes?
Yeah, as myself, I suppose, as a policy, we got to stop digging the hole deeper, I suppose. We got to stop installing fossil fuel systems into commercial and domestic buildings, I suppose. That as a policy, where's the stick, I suppose. I know heat pumps are more expensive, but we got to stop digging the hole deeper, because us as a one-stop shop, we'll be retrofitting those houses in 10 years that we're currently putting oil and gas boilers into. So as a policy, I suppose that's one thing that needs to change, but I suppose linking in different companies into the ecosystem is, I suppose, is a challenge. From a policy, I'm not fully up to speed, I suppose, on how policy can change that. But okay, that marriage, I suppose, between different companies.
We can ask Barbara. Do you have any specific requests immediately?
Yeah, I think the session before, the guys were talking on a wish list for Christmas, and I think I have the same wish list for Christmas.
Leave that for later. If you don't have anything immediately, then I would go.
Yeah, no. I would say my wish list. Let's say my wish into policy is really, to create an environment in a way of that heat pumps are equally treated technology-wise. What does it mean? Means let's say that electricity is the key. The electricity price is the key. That we have let's say a fair approach towards heat pumps. That we get let's say fair treatment of having the right electricity prices across Europe. Because this is from where it starts, and this is from where I think also the pull from the end customer will come. Without that, I think we are still playing a good part, but not that important part as we have to do in reaching the decarbonization targets, also from the heating industry.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah.
Now you have me. Barbara finished by saying that the pull will come from customers, and the sooner that happens, the better. Before that, you must create the environment, and the environment is being created. I think the Commission and the Parliament have done a lot. The targets are being set, and now the policy is being put in place to make those targets be achievable, such as number one, the directives, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which is going to be renewed, the Energy Efficiency Directive, and then the whole question of creating smart homes and all that entails. And that will involve the industry, because once the industry gets the message, direction, they will follow suit. Once the targets are set there, they have to meet them. And then, of course, through the European Parliament and the Commission, we can set the financing to support that. But that then has to come down to local level, and this is where we need to work, do all the work really. But I think I'd be confident enough that we are now setting the targets, we are now putting in place the supports, the member states have to follow suit, and then you make it happen. Through what Barbara and Declan were saying there, creating that one-stop shop, creating the confidence that if I want to do something, I know where to go to do it, and I know that the end result is going to be positive. And I think that's the missing piece at the minute, and that's going to be vital. Because we have to have smart homes, we have to have, for instance, in the buildings, especially apartment buildings, they'll have to have charging points, smart appliances, and then the overall rating. And the final point I would make is, while we are talking about 85% of the buildings that are now will be there in 2050, 15% will be new. All those should be passive buildings from now on. So that's where we should also, that's the easiest thing to do actually, because if you set the framework, it have to happen.
Thank you very much. IKEA, Rob, what is the role of IKEA in such an industrial ecosystem? If you agree that it is needed, of course.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a need, and of course, we can support from our work within public affairs and from other areas. Not so much maybe in the equipment and the maintenance, et cetera, but where we can hit an ecosystem is in the solution side. And I'll use an example we have in our store in Berlin, where we have three 500 kilowatt heat pumps that use an existing public pipeline that has 36 degrees Celsius warm sewage water coming from the neighborhood housing district as the energy source. So I think we can, in the communities in which we exist, see how do we utilize excess heat or excess cooling from us to neighborhoods, neighborhoods back to us, et cetera. So I think there's opportunity for us to connect in the solution design versus maybe in some of the other areas that are being discussed.
Very nice. We're coming to a close. It's a pity again. I think we could discuss this longer, and there is more to be said. I like this idea a lot, Antonio, of an industrial ecosystem that we should pursue. And I also take it with me that 2021, there is an update of the industrial strategy, because we need some time to prepare this. And I think we have some good players here on board that can help us to do so. One last statement for all of you, this Christmas wish, if you haven't said it already, but what in your perspective, in one word maybe, or one sentence, would accelerate the deployment of, and let's make it bigger than heat pumps, the deployment of decarbonized solutions in the building sector, the key success?
My view is that we should maybe take the time to reflect about different policy option and the interaction of the different option, and not to think about a silver bullet option that will maybe just optimize a very tiny problem of the whole ecosystem. Yes, we have some urgency in the action, but we should not forget that the reality is very complex, and that we have to tackle this, to find a toolbox, as it was said by previous speakers in previous session. Just to take an example of the energy pricing and CO2 pricing, we have to think a bit to have the analytical tools to find, and I think we need some knowledge about that, and the ecosystem approach will try also to think about where we can speed up the process, the decarbonization transition, by having a better understanding, apprehension of how the things are working within ecosystem and between ecosystems.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Rob, what would you need to accelerate your action?
Yeah, you asked for one word, and that word would be kraftsamla, which is Swedish for togetherness. I think the way to tackle this is for us to continue to come together in forums like this and other aspects to learn and understand what others are doing, what solutions exist that we can steal with pride and implement in our buildings, whether they're retail outlets like us or individual housing solutions. It's to continue to share the learnings. I was in another program that I spoke at a couple of weeks ago, where we started to learn about our artificial intelligence solutions for our heating and cooling that we're now testing. So the more we can come together, brainstorm, and bring this knowledge base together, the more we can share and learn and really start to make a impact quickly.
You made me learn something. My Swedish is insufficient, but this is great. This is a great takeaway. Sean, do you have a Gaelic word for us that summarizes your wish?
Tyler is a dream. And the dream would be that the citizens I represent, that if they came to me or I came to them and said, it's now time to renovate your house, I'd be able to say to them, great, it'll cost you so much. These are the supports available from government. These are the grants. These are the people who will do it for you. And I can guarantee you, you'll be very happy for so doing. Once we're able to do that, we'll make a lot of progress.
Thank you very much. I think, Declan, that was your ending sentence, no?
No, thank you, Sean. You've been given Superhomes and TA a good plug here. Yeah, I suppose a couple of quick bullet points. One would be low interest finance packages, because I believe we have the heat pump technology and the fabric skills and technology to retrofit houses, but how does the end user pay for it? And so it's low interest finance that are down at 2 or 3%. That makes sense. So that's one of our main barriers. Lots of people wish to retrofit their house, but how do they finance it? Another thing then, once they put in the heat pump, your fuel is obviously electricity. So how do you look at reducing that cost, either through the management of the system? So can you have smart tariffs? So ask homeowners to come on in the, not put on their heat pumps in the peak at 6 o'clock in the evening when everyone is cooking or coming home. How can you use your house as a battery or a deployment to come off, get your heat pumps to come on in off-peak times, and they get a reduced tariff from that. And then the final one would be, if a homeowner wants to do this and get the incentive, how do you also have incentivized the engineers or installers to actually design and deliver the house on the client's behalf? Because unfortunately there is a cost associated to that. So it's not just subsidizing technology, it's also bringing that designer into play as well.
Knowledge, yeah. Thank you very much. And we close with you, Barbara.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think, all comes, starts with the end user. And that's, I think the key is to create this sense of urgency, but in a positive way. That our customers, that the end user really understands, that there is a need, to walk and to accelerate towards reaching the decarbonization targets. And I think this needs to be accompanied by, I would say, positive enablers. Positive enablers when we look into, let's say, the overall environment in attractive electricity. Once more again, but then also really, great products with energy efficient products and related systems. So, to talk about, sector coupling. And then again, I think, and this was pointed out a couple of times, it's really resources, it's really people who can make it happen. And this is I think one of the biggest challenges which were pointed out, that we have the right resources, that we have the right people installing and working and operating on heat pumps, because that appears also not in our industry, to turn out as the bottleneck, of the whole HP ecosystem. It's not about, only technical skills. It is really the lack of resources.
But that could be a great summary of the whole session. We need people that are skilled enough to provide trust to other people, so that they are hopeful enough to invest in decarbonized technologies for a bright future, because I fully agree, it gives perspective. And it's actually very nice and comfortable to live in a house where the temperature level and air quality is simply taken for granted. Thank you very much. I hope that this is just the start of a long discussion that we can have over the next 10 years, maybe even longer, but the foundations need to be put down now. So thank you for helping us doing that, and have a great afternoon.